Hello and welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. And today we're kicking off with a little bit of nervousness because, as you know, a number of weeks ago, and I've been on holidays for a few weeks, but I've been using those few weeks to try and fix the challenge that we faced a number of weeks back, where the show kind of fell over. For those of you who were watching, you will remember. In fact, I think most people in the chat already will have been there. And hello to Kelly and to Mr. Fomiati, and thank you to Cathy, who is stepping in for the wonderful Linda today. Linda is away doing some family things as she needs to, and so Cathy is stepping in as our moderator. I mean, Cathy's always a moderator, but definitely stepping up to the first plate today to do that for us. So thank you, Cathy. Yeah, so we are proceeding today with a Q&A. We're doing it under the sort of the nuance of, is all of the tech going to work? I certainly hope so. I'll tell you, I've been through a bit of a process, an expensive process to try and figure it out. Literally all of the connections between my street and my house have been completely replaced as far as the internet goes. And I've completely replaced and upgraded my router. It's $1,000 to do that. That was very expensive. So fingers crossed it's all working. I did have a look at some of the stats just a bit earlier, and there was a little bit of a challenge that it said, but anyway, hopefully it's all coming through. And Kelly's telling me that it sounds and looks good so far. Fingers crossed, Kelly. Fingers crossed. Nothing disturbs my innards more than the tech not working for our live shows, because we want to have it all ready to go for our special guest next week. Brenda Earle Stokes is joining us, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to talk about things such as self-accompaniment, because she plays a lot of piano bars and does a lot of that sort of stuff, but she's also a highly trained singing teacher. And so I'm hoping that we can really glean from her next week in talking through a range of those sorts of things, because a lot of you do self-accompany, and as I do, and it'll be really great to pick up on some very practical skills from her, because she's been doing this for a long time in New York. So yeah, we're going to be able to talk with a New York piano bar singing teacher. That's probably a really crass way of describing Brenda's expertise. In fact, it is a crass way of describing her expertise, but I'm looking forward to having her on the show next week. And thank you, Melvin. It says, you're saying there, it's so far so good. Yes. And I'm hoping it proceeds that way. And in fact, Melvin, I'm going to give you the first question of the day, because you asked a question 3 weeks ago when I had the live show. Oh, that's right. It was about 4 or 5 weeks ago, because I had to then cancel the next one because I still hadn't got all the tech issue fixed. And so it was back on June the 12th. Wow. Okay. It was a little while ago, wasn't it? But the wonderful Linda has made notes for me about all of the questions that you were asking during that ill-fated live hangout. And so we're going to work our way through those today. But of course, as we're going along, don't hesitate to put your live questions into the live chat. And I will endeavour to keep an eye on it, because whilst we've got the wonderful Cathy jumping in and moderating for us in the live chat, I'm still going to have to keep an eye on the live chat myself to pick up on your questions, which Linda would normally be. Hey, look, you've all been hanging out here long enough to know how it all works. So let's get into the Q&A right after this. Okay, Melvin, you asked 4 or 5 weeks ago, how can I improve my skill in singing higher pitches in my chest voice? You know, that's actually a really good question. I'm a great believer in workshopping our registers, the lower register, the upper register, into falsetto, separately, but then doing that in a way that then, you know, bridges and manages those registrations. And so working your skills in the higher pitches, as you are saying, in the upper parts of your range, takes some bodybuilding, not bodybuilding. In fact, we've got another question later about bodybuilding, but I'm talking about muscular building, the muscular building of your vocal folds and the management and the balancing of all of that. And so we do just have to be attentive to those things, and we also have to. There's some work to be done in the way we stretch the ligament, the vocal fold ligament, and how we're able to manage the loading of that when we're high. And so it's all about building the voice to that task. And as we go along in that sort of step-by-step process for the development of your voice, it takes time. What a lot of singers want to do, Melvin, is they want to jump straight to high and loud. That's because that's what we see a lot on TV talent shows, isn't it? High and loud. And in fact, what we want to do is start off not low and soft, but we do want to kind of, first of all, work the voice in a really comfortable range at a really moderate volume, and really develop the voice from there. And then we can increase the height of the notes, and we can increase the volume, but all as we continue to manage that sense of balance. And so it is really important that we work on that. I want to just throw in here, if you keep seeing my eyes dart away today, it's going to be because I'm checking the stream status, and secondly, I'm checking for live questions as they come through. So forgive me for that today. We are old school. We've done old school before, haven't we? And we've succeeded. So I'm sure we'll be fine as we go along. So Melvin, it's all about developing the voice in a very step-like manner, baby steps, not placing the voice under too much load too quickly. By that I mean too high, too loud, too quickly, and really workshopping the voice from there. I've seen a question come in here from Kelly. So let's come across to Kelly's question, because come on, Daniel, get that right. This is Kelly's question. Just asked, how does one know when they are tapping into their proper singing voice? Kelly, I have a sneaking suspicion you've been asking questions along this line for a few weeks now. I think there's in one sense there's this awareness that it feels right. I know when I'm singing songs that are right in my wheelhouse, that feel good vocally, but also feel good, dare I say, emotionally. My emotional connection to the song feels right. It just feels like there's this fluency that comes, and everything just connects and has this sense of ease to it. And that's generally where I feel like it's, what did you say, that you're tapping into your proper singing voice. This is going to be different for everyone. I know. I can almost see your very pleasant face looking at me as I say this, Kelly. But it's not easy for me to tell you how that's going to feel, simply because it's going to feel differently for you than it will for me. And but I typically, when I'm working with students who are, I don't know, in that zone, they're in that space where everything just, I don't know, there seems to be an ease come across them, this sense of, you know, and sometimes it's momentary, sometimes it's not a whole song, sometimes it's a phrase, or, you know, even when we're first developing this awareness, it might be only a word. But for whatever reason, that word and that shape and that vowel just feels right. And when we find that, you know, I think it's that experience that keeps us coming back. It's almost like the surfer's perfect wave. I will let you know, while I've been on holidays, in fact, I think I told you before I went away, I did go skiing for a few days, about 1,300 kilometers south of where I am. I live in the wrong part of the world to ski. But anyway, we went down to a place called Perisher here in Australia. Skiing wasn't great weather-wise. Monday was a complete whiteout. It was atrocious skiing weather. Tuesday, Wednesday, a bit better. Thursday morning was right through till about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon was pretty special. And, you know, it's those special days that you just go, oh, that's right. That's why I love this. This just perfect weather, clear. You can see the contours of the ground. There's fresh snow on the field. You suddenly feel like, oh, that's right, I can do this. This feels comfortable. It feels natural. It feels like I have a fluency around what I'm doing. And I think you know, and that's what keeps me coming back for skiing. And it's like that perfect wave for a surfer. You know, when you have those experiences, it does keep you coming back for more. And Kelly, I'm fairly confident, if I might be so bold as to suggest, I'm fairly confident that I have seen you have those moments in our private lessons together. And it's just, sometimes it's even just being reminded, you know, if it's been a little while between those experiences. So for example, when we went skiing a couple of weeks ago, it had been the first time I'd been skiing since before COVID. So nearly 4 years. And so I can tell you, when I was trying very unsuccessfully to get my ski legs back on the Monday, the conditions were atrocious. They were so bad, to the point where I actually had a bit of a nasty accident. It could have been catastrophic. It wasn't, and I'm okay, but I really hurt my back a bit. And because the conditions were bad, really, in hindsight, I shouldn't have been skiing. Neither should have the other thousands of people that were out there trying to give it a red hot go. But I can tell you, while I was skiing on that Monday, I'm thinking, oh, gee, this is not a lot of fun. This is actually really hard work, and why do I feel so uncoordinated? And why do I feel like things are just not, why do I have no fluency? Apart from the fact that this is the first time I've done it in 4 years. But I've been skiing a long time, since I was a teenager, and it never takes me that long to get things back. But, you know, in one sense, I was skiing in the wrong conditions, and it can be like that with our singing. When you're singing the wrong stuff, you know, when you're not singing in your wheelhouse. And I'm not saying don't experiment, don't explore, but what I did on Monday with my skiing is I went, okay, stop, especially after I had this significant accident. Stop, call it a day. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll restart. And let's not try and do anything big and fancy as far as the slopes go. Let's be really moderate. Let's jump back into how I know to do what I know to do. And we'll rebuild from there, to the point where that when I got to the Thursday morning, I was able to get out and ski some of the more difficult slopes and really enjoy it, because I'd re-established that fluency. And it's the same with our singing. Sometimes we're all too keen to jump straight into the difficult stuff, whereas it can be really beneficial to just remind the voice, you know how to do this, and resit the voice into that really comfortable space, and have the voice just really enjoy that sensation of phonation. Sensation of phonation. There's a statement. And so that's what I've been encouraging you to do, Kelly. Remind yourself that your voice does know how to do this, but do it within really safe parameters to start, and then move into the more challenging areas. Kelly's just made a comment here. I'll put it up on the screen for us so that we can see it. Absolutely, I remember that sense of surprise and feeling elated. Yes, I remember that too, Kelly, in one of our lessons particularly. I'm just looking through our questions here. Cathy's just written here, I find what feels good changes as my voice develops. I train my voice to use different techniques. Kelly, Cathy, can I really out you in a really positive way, as someone who I really admire your willingness to explore different voice activity, and the reason I'm able to say this is because you regularly share on the Facebook, within the Facebook community, and for those of you who are not already a part of that, please come and be a part of the Facebook community at Voice Essentials. Just search Voice Essentials Community, and I think you'll find us. And Cathy, the amount of different styles. And I acknowledge you're not going from opera to heavy metal, but you are often exploring different, voice settings, and I really admire your exploration of your voice. I think it's a really wonderful thing, and I think that's why, and evidently that feels good to you as you feel those changes. And but it really, when we explore the voice like that, as you do, Cathy, we really do have that opportunity to develop a fuller vocal experience, and as a result, a fuller vocal expression. And I've often said to singers, most singers, and I say most to be certain to not say all, but I think a lot of singers do have their wheelhouse. They do have that space where they feel just right with the voice, and it feels, and it'll be for me, for example, it's adult contemporary. Think everything from Rascal Flatts to Josh Groban to, some of the Disney stuff. Like it's, that's sort of my thing. That's where I feel comfortable. I think most singers kind of establish that sense of self. But when we then explore other genres, it may not be that we then discover. So, for example, I had to do more than explore jazz for my undergrads back in the 90s. I had to embody it. Like jazz had to be. I ate, drank, slept, breathed jazz voice for 3-4 years. So, you know, if there was ever going to be an opportunity for me to discover that jazz was my thing, that was going to be it, because I sang a lot of jazz. But it never did. It never grabbed me. And prior to that, I'd done 2 years of classical voice. It never grabbed me. But both experiences, the 2 years of classical and the 3 or 4 years of jazz vocal, all work into forming me to be the singer I am today. It's not, none of those experiences are a loss. They're all of advantage to me, and they form the story of my vocal development, and in turn are a part of my vocal formation. But they've never become that core being that I am as a singer, which, as I just shared, is adult contemporary. And so, you know, but I think part of you really knowing who you are as a singer does require that very serious exploration of other genres. And again, Cathy, you're an excellent example of someone who does that with all due aplomb. And Cathy's just writing here, thank you, your online courses have given me a very solid base to add in a healthy and sustainable way. And thanks, Cathy. It's a great, you know, it is very helpful to me to always get that feedback, because, you know, the online courses continue to be of great benefit to a lot of people, and I'm pleased that that's the case. I want to move on to another question now by Tony D Music. And Tony has written, this is a number of weeks ago, my core musculature has changed a bit thanks to exercise, and I've had to adapt my breathing. And he's still doing this as things feel different when they are working. Have you come across this before? Now, the interesting addition to Tony D Music's question is this additional statement: to add to my question, I'm sitting in a wheelchair, but that has been for decades. And Tony, your being wheelchair in a wheelchair is obviously one of the challenges that you would be facing as a singer. But what I want to really recognize as being really positive is that you haven't allowed that to be the limitation on your singing, and I think that's terrific. But of course, our posture, whether we're seated in a wheelchair or just simply on a chair with no wheels, or whether we're standing or whatever position we find ourselves in, that is going to be contributing itself in and upon our vocal production. And we have to be cognizant of that. Our posture is so important in how we experience our voice, how we use our voice, and it's really important for us to always remember that. Always, if something's not going right, first and foremost, check in on your body alignment. Where are you holding tension? Muscles always want to gather tension. They don't want to release tension. We have to really actively release and be very intentional in that release. And so when things are not feeling 100% vocally, check in with your alignment, check in with your posture, first and foremost. And then secondly, check in with your breath. What's your air doing? Because I tell you, if you're physically tight, your air is going to be really challenged in the way you're able to manage it and have direct connection to it. So I hope that's helpful. To the essence of the question beyond the wheelchair, Tony, when we do start to exercise in different ways, it can, in some ways, rebalance our sense of physicality. And when we have that sense of rebalancing, of a physicality, there can be some relearning that has to take place. And so that's certainly worth you having a look at, Tony, if you have reason to come back and join in the discussion, because you left the question 4 or 5 weeks ago. Napolitano has asked, my question for today: why do I feel I quickly lose my energy whenever I try to sing a more difficult song, like 3 or 4 times? It's not even vocal fatigue, it's breath fatigue and lack of energy. Well, if I was to be cheeky, I would say, well, breath fatigue is vocal fatigue, but I do take your, well, I think it's, we can split those and identify them as slightly different experiences, but it is all one, right? The whole system is, we want it to work in this synergetic way. But when it may well be that to trivialize it, or not trivialize it, familiarity can breed contempt, right? If you say, when you say that, you say the word, a word. So let's say you say the word and you say it multiple times, like and you say it many times, suddenly it starts to just become a bit of a blur. There may well be something in the process of singing a song, like one song, the same song, 3 or 4 times. It's almost like we can start to lose the forest for the trees, and we can kind of start to go, oh, well, where am I? I know I've experienced this in the studio. When you step into a recording studio in a professional setting, you'll often be there for 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours. I mean, often you're in the studio space for much longer than that, but you might be in the vocal booth for 3 to 4 hours singing the one song. So there are different ways of approaching this, but often you might sing the song through 3 or 4 times. And then the engineer will often capture all of those, but then we might then go through it, stanza by stanza, verse by verse, even line by line, and just capturing different moments. And then that all gets edited down and pasted together to form the whole picture. And it's very rare, very, very rare indeed, for a singular take to be the take. It's so rare it becomes a part of, urban legend, and because it just doesn't happen very often. It's a bit like the hole-in-one in golf. It happens, but boy, when it does, there's celebration because it's rare. The rest of us are, having to hit 20 times to get to the tee. For me, it'd be much more than that because I don't play golf. But anyway, so those one takes are very rare. So it's a matter of recognizing that those first 3 to 4 takes. In fact, what I have noted is you're often capturing some really good stuff from the first and second take because there's that sense of anticipation and adrenaline and energy in the first 2 takes that seems to just kind of die off in the third and fourth. That's not to say that you don't grab something from the third and fourth take, but it can sort of get a little lackluster thereafter. And I think it is just that familiarity that that adrenaline dies off and we start to lose that sense of energy. So Napolitano, I don't think you're experiencing anything odd there. It's not to say that it has to be that way in so much as I guess you could really consciously work towards it not being the case, that the energy is dying off. I think you could really actively do that, but I think you'd have to be really conscious and about doing that. And I think it's probably going to cost you a lot physically, like just that sense of output will be quite full on. This is a comment by Sharon. Sharon has just said, yes, the repetition of recording can be very vocally tiring. It can. And Sharon, on that point, and I'm sure you do this, but it's something for others to consider, is it's very easy in a recording scenario to want to just hammer away at it. But you've got to remember that the voice needs moments of rest. And so I will actually be quite directive in a recording session where I'll do 3 or 4 takes and then I'll step out of the booth. I don't stay in the booth. I'll step out and I'll go and I might come out and have a listen to what we've recorded. So listening requires me to be quiet, which is positive. I'll come out, I'll hydrate. And the further I get into a session, I might even go for a walk. And that's not going to be a bad thing for the engineer. The engineer has often got plenty to do. It's not as if there's nothing for them to do. And just taking those moments of break, just like we would. Think about it. You wouldn't sing constantly at a live gig. You wouldn't sing constantly for 3 hours. If you're doing that, don't do that. But no one's doing that, right? You're taking breaks. You're having moments of downtime vocally. You've got to do the same thing in a session. It's just harder to remember to do it in a recording session because you kind of get into that mental zone and space. So just try to remember to take the downtime, take a break, and give the voice rest periods throughout. We're going to go one more question, then I'm going to call it a day because this being my first day back in the studio teaching, I can already feel my vocal fitness just starting to be on the edgy side, and I don't want to tempt fate too much when it comes to the live recording. I think we've done okay tech-wise, haven't we? I think we've gone okay today, which is good. It makes me confident for the coming weeks, which is good. And Mr. Fomiardi, I see you there, good sir. G'day. Okay, that one user is the name of the person asking this question 5 weeks ago. Does the bodybuilding practice of pushing your muscles to near or complete muscular failure for increased strength and hypertrophy also apply to the vocal muscles for increasing vocal strength? I love this question. I think it's a really intuitive question and really interesting question. Let's just be mindful of. I noticed a few new techie doodads. So I've just seen Melvin's question here. Melvin, I'm going to need you to qualify this. What is this? A tech was excellent. I noticed a few new techie doodads. Melvin, I'm going to need you to qualify what you mean by techie doodads, because I'm not sure what you mean there. Should we push the voice? And I do understand the notion of pushing big muscles to the point of muscular failure for increased for building. I think we have to be careful, and I'm speaking more to my anecdotal knowledge here than wanting to quote anyone or be specific here. But I think we'd have to be careful with that because, yes, the larynx and the voice is being driven by muscle. It is. But there are a number of other factors, which is why this is complex. There are a number of other factors at play here, and one of those being the fact that the vocal fold structure is not only muscle. So there are 3 layers of the vocal fold. The top layer is called the epithelium, and it's like a thin mucosa that is it's its own molecular structure, and it sits on top of another layer, the mid layer, called the lamina propria. Now there's a gap called Reinke's space that sits between the lamina propria, I'll bring these down, the lamina propria and the epithelium. And they are able to freely move over each other. A bit like, you know, the skin on your hand can, the top of your hand can move. But the lamina propria, which you can break that down into other layers as well, then there's a third layer that is the vocalis muscle, the actual muscle part of the vocal fold. And so it's not only about, when we train the voice, it's not only about muscle. There's other stuff going on, and this top layer is coming into connection with its opposing side. So there's a left and a right vocal fold, and it's oscillating in really high fashion, and it's lubricated, and whereas your other muscles, like your thigh and your bicep and those sorts of muscles, it's working in team with other muscles, but it's not having to come into contact. There's no shearing force being formed by it directly coming into play against another muscle. And so I think we just have to be mindful of that as an additional aspect to the development of our vocal strength and those sorts of things. So I wouldn't be advising for you to take your voice to the point of muscular failure in the hope that that's going to benefit your vocal development. I think that's possibly going to lead to, in fact, I would venture to say that is going to lead to more trouble than it's worth, and could really cause you some problems. I see Melvin is saying Melvin, because Melvin was just saying about the doodads. Well, those little doodads, like Melvin's making a point of this QR code here, which takes you to the Voice Essentials site. And what else did you notice too, Melvin? The microphone. Yeah, that's I've been using those for a little while, Melvin. So anyway, I'm glad you noticed them. That's good. Steve, I see your question there, but I am going to call it, I'm going to draw a line under it today, because I can feel my voice fatiguing, and as it always, because I've just had 2 weeks off, so that 2 weeks of reduced vocal load does cause my vocal fitness to just come off the boil a little bit. And so just like I've been advocating earlier about vocal rest and whatever, I have to re-establish my vocal fitness over time. And within a week, I'll be back to what I was 3 weeks ago, but we just have to be wise in the use of our voice and re-establish our vocal fitness slowly but surely. I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout. Tech issues aside, I think we did all right. Yes, Steve, I've seen Steve Bartlett. Yes, next time, jump in next time. Next week, Brenda Earle Stokes will be with us. Fingers crossed. She's a busy lady, so pinning her down can be challenging. But I'm hoping Brenda will join us. If not, she'll join us in weeks later. And we're going to talk about, I think we're going to be talking about things like accompaniment and self-playing and that sort of stuff. Tune in next week. To do the tune in, make sure you subscribe, hit the white bell icon, get reminders sent out to you when I do go live. We do this most Mondays, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. When I say most, we do it every Monday. It's just that sometimes I'm on holidays or we have public holidays or whatever. There you go. First live hangout for the second semester here in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. I hope you have a great week. Cathy, thanks for being on deck and looking after our moderation for today. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.